Over the past 2 years, I've watched hundreds of gay short films spanning more than 7 decades. It's hard to say which one was the best, but the most moving one for me was a little known, almost lost short film from 1954, titled Last Spring. And no, not because of its plot. Let me try to explain why it almost made me cry. When we talk about gay filmmakers, we rarely mention François Reichenbach, even though he directed over 100 shorts and features over the course of almost 40 years, won the Grand Prix in Cannes in 1964 and an Oscar in 1970. And it's not like nobody knew he was gay. It wasn't something he hid. He would bring his boyfriends to the set for a small role or technical work. But most of the time they served no purpose. They were simply there for the filmmaker's pleasure. The main reason why he is often ignored is that almost all of his films are documentaries and portraits. And even though his lens is unmistakably gay, his subjects most often are not. He documented daily life, but not necessarily queer life, which was still illegal in most parts of the world during the 50s and 60s anyway, so film studios weren't interested in catering to that market. That is something we have to keep in mind when we look at the history of gay short films. Even to this day, 99% of them are not slick Hollywood productions. They are independently made, often by amateurs, sometimes even breaking existing laws. No one makes gay short films to get rich. The business model for Jean Genet's Un Chant d'Amour involved selling copies of it to wealthy French collectors, and that's it. This hasn't really changed. Thanks to smartphones and streaming platforms, more people than ever are able to make and show their films. So that cute boy meets boy romance you recently saw on YouTube probably was shot by a group of friends over a weekend at one of their homes, just like Fireworks was decades earlier. The same applies to François Reichenbach's Last Spring. Shortly before he officially became a filmmaker, Reichenbach worked as an art dealer in the United States and was part of a circle of gay socialites, including writer Glenway Westcott, his life partner Monroe Wheeler, and their former third, influential photographer George Platt Lynes, an absolute legend. Seriously, look up his work and be amazed for hours. Reichenbach filmed his very first narrative short last spring with the help of these friends at Westcott's farmhouse in New Jersey. On paper, it's nothing new, even back in 1954. Black and white, no dialogue, a huge chunk of its 22 minutes are dream sequences, of course. And visually, it's clearly influenced by Jean Cocteau's films, especially his 1950 feature Orpheus. The plot is simple. A 20-something gay couple's blissful life on a farm is threatened when one of them goes off to New York City for unknown reasons. The guy left behind is growing frustrated when he doesn't get any letters from his boyfriend. He starts having dreams in which he loses him in the fog. Then there's a whole sequence in which he dreams of walking around in New York, either watching over his boyfriend or remembering their time together, it's not really clear. Finally, he chases after him in a garden. Especially that last part felt very familiar to me, having seen both Cocteau's films and Fragment of Seeking. Don't get me wrong, the whole short is really well done by a clearly skilled filmmaker. But it can seem a little derivative. That's actually not too surprising. A lot of first-time filmmakers are very obvious about their influences. And back then, cameras and film stock were expensive. So if you were making your own movies, you were either rich or really into cinema, or both. That's why so many of the surviving amateur shorts made by drag queens from that era are surprisingly well-produced parodies of classic and even current films. It often was the only outlet for the community's obsession with the divas of old Hollywood. They're really fun to watch, even if you have no idea what they are spoofing. François Reichenbach was a nepo baby, unsurprisingly, and loved films. He was known to take his camera everywhere, so his first foray into filmmaking was really only a question of time. He had a true documentarian's eye. So it's no wonder that a lot of people say that the section shot on the streets of New York City is the highlight of last spring. Sure, those scenes are interesting and highly valuable for historians. But for me, the film's real power lies in its first 3 minutes depicting the gay couple on the farm. We don't see anything sexual, not even a kiss, it was the 50s. But that's not necessary because what we get is even better. Real intimacy. Look at these two and how close they are and tell me they're not meant to be a couple and totally into each other. This depiction of gay love simply did not exist back then. The convict in Un Chant d'Amour is only allowed to be happy in his fantasy, but these two already live together on a farm. Also, spoiler alert for a film from 1954, they get a happy ending. Our dreamer wakes up when, in a cute wink to Jean Genet, a flower lands on his face, thrown by his boyfriend who has finally returned. Knowing that these two actors, John Connolly and Richard Kushner, were also a couple in real life, and the location was the property of another actual gay couple, genuinely warms my heart. Because usually queer history is all about the struggle. It's like we are only able to filter it through stories of oppression and persecution and our occasional victories against those. Of course, it's extremely important to remember how bad times were everywhere and still are in a lot of places. But we mustn't forget that there is also joy in our lives and always has been. Last Spring was never meant to be seen by the general public. It was just a film made by and for friends. Sure, a copy of it had long been available at the Kinsey Institute. But I doubt that many of us have actually made the trip to their archives and seen it. That all changed in the 2010s, when the daughter of important French New Wave producer Pierre Braunberger gifted a copy of it to the Cinémathèque Française, which restored the film together with a bunch of personal home movies filmed by Reichenbach on his various travels. This home movie collection is now named Nus Masculins, Male Nudes, which is a bit of a clickbait title because yes, there are a few naked guys in it. But the majority of men that Reichenbach met and filmed are clothed. We see them sunbathing, picking flowers, walking their dogs, hanging out with friends and apparently even voguing, at a time when the majority of the population refused to acknowledge that they even existed. But they did. So did Harold T. O'Neill, who documented his whole adult life from 1939 up to the 1980s, leaving us a treasure trove of material showing pride parades, but also just domestic life with his partner, and vacations and parties with their friends. Yes, it's a snapshot from a more privileged part of our community, one we might never get from the marginalized corners. But it's still nice to see any queer people in the olden days, who were able to be themselves without fear, even if only for a few precious moments away from the public eye. They deserve to live like that, out in the open. We all do. And that's why I keep coming back to Last Spring. Because it shows that even though society might try its best to suppress it, queer joy and love will always persist. Thank you for watching. I'll leave some interesting links in the video description, but please don't forget to like this video and subscribe before you check those out, or you miss the next episode where we finally get some dialogue.